Okay. Make sure we don't have any feedback on that. All right. So the flood planning process started. If anybody familiar with the water planning process that's going on in the state for the past 20 years, since the early 90s or mid 90s or so, this is kind of a complement to that. And this came directly on top of Hurricane Harvey. After Hurricane Harvey, this was one of the state legislative projects, one of their highly funding projects that they funded back in 2019. So we started the first flood planning process in 2021. We had adopted in 2024. Now we're just starting the second cycle. So there's 15 regions throughout the state that goes through our flood planning process. You are in the Nueces Regional Flood Planning process. They're kind of based on basically where your river authorities are at. There's a San Antonio one, the Lower Colorado, like those types of things. And you guys are all here inside the Nueces River Authority Basin. So why do we plan? Hurricane Harvey, y'all all remember the incidents that came with that, the event we had earlier in June with the tropical storm. Planning is a very important process to get things going. And most importantly, it's about how do we do this flood planning process? So this is a watershed based. So that we started from the top. So our basin starts up in Edwards County where Rock Springs is. Everybody had a chance to go to Rock Springs? Everybody been up there? If you haven't been, it's actually a really, really neat place to go because that's where three major rivers start from. The Guadalupe, the Colorado, and the Nueces all start on the hill inside this. You go to the courthouse and you can see everything that goes this way goes to the Nueces. Everything that goes that way goes to the South Llano and then to the Colorado and all those different. So it's really, really a neat process to go up there and see. So all that water starts up there in the hill country and eventually it makes its way down here into Corpus Christi. So it's a very watershed base because all that water comes downstream for the most part. We do talk a little bit about coastal flooding in our process, but that's how it works. This is also a very bottom-up approach. We'll talk a little bit about some of the projects we did, but everything that we funded, everything that we put in our state flood plan came from individuals coming to our flood planning group meetings and telling us about their problems. We're going to go a little bit later about how big the project is, but every project that was identified came from individuals. I want to repeat that because that's very, very important to us, is that you guys have to be involved in our process so that you guys can be represented in the flood plan. So we identified flood risks, the greatest needs, and we also looked at recommending solutions. So why is this planning process very important? First of all, the most important thing is funding. If you are not in the state flood plan, you cannot apply for state flood fund money. Flood Infrastructure Fund goes through the Texas Water Development Board. Every project that they fund has to be inside the state flood plan. In order to be in the state flood plan, you have to be in the Nueces Regional Flood Plan. So any project that needs to get funding to get improvements has to start with our regional project, or in the regional plan, then it gets rolled into the state plan, and then you become eligible for funding. That's the most important thing. We can't fix projects if you don't have money to fix these projects. That's one of the very most important products. And then we also talk a lot about public education. We talk about recommending legislation to that maybe improve flood planning policies, about ordinances, those types of things. All those processes also come through our flood planning process. And I'm going to go over a lot of stuff. So please, if you have a question on the slide, please raise your hand and ask then. I don't want to skip you or move any forward. Yes. I'll have a slide here in a minute where we're going to talk about projects that we put in this first flood plan. So we'll go a little bit of that. But one of the projects that so the first Flood Infrastructure Fund was done in 2020. Right after they started the flood plan, they did it, and those did not require to be in the state flood plan because there wasn't a state flood plan yet. But is anybody familiar with the Gregory Green Lakes project that's in Portland? It's in Portland and Gregory in San Patricio County. That was around a $15 million project that we got funded through the state. And we actually relieved Gregory out of the floodplain. If you've ever been in Gregory back 30, 40, every rain event they had standing water in their streets. Well, that project, it's in the drainage ditch from if you know where North Shore Country Club is, all the way into Gregory, and then we went back towards Wildcat in Portland, and we drained a lot of water from that whole area, but we took Gregory out of the floodplain, which was a really big accomplishment from that project, but that was a type of project that came from this funding program. Any other questions? So this is the Region 13 Nueces Flood Planning Group. Region 13, we don't call it unlucky, so don't worry. We were pretty successful so far in our flood planning process. We have 13 members who represent the general public. We have someone from industry, small business, cities, the environment, counties, river authorities, water district, water utilities, flood district, the agricultural, plumbing, public, and then we have electric generating, which is the one spot we have not filled in our flood planning group. So if you know anybody who is in the electric generating industry who would like to be part of our group to represent them, we would love to have that member. We have not been able to fill that for the last couple of years. So that'd be the first one, is you could be one of our members on our board. But most of these folks are spread out from the hill country and all around. We do have, I think, 6 of them are located in the greater coastal Bend area, and the rest of them are spread out through the rest of the basin. So that's the area we have to cover. It's all are part of 31 different counties. We have 57 cities and another 50 plus districts like MUDs or smaller areas. And there's also around 350 colonias in this area as well. So it's a very large region that we are responsible to cover. And that's going to talk a lot about the getting involved in the process. So there's 3 lakes. We have the Choke Canyon Reservoir and Lake Corpus Christi, most people know about. There's also a very small lake up in Zavala County, the upper Nueces Lake. That is, it's a very, very small lake. I don't think it's got, I don't even think we can calculate the amount of water that's in it right now. It's pretty dry up there. Let's see here. So it's 24,000 square miles, and it's about 1.1 million people are inside that basin. That's who we're trying to protect. Any questions about the territory that we cover? I know it's a lot of places we have to drive around to. So where we've been, so we started the first flood planning process in 2020. We had our first general meeting. We were electing the sponsors and our technical consultants in the spring of 2021. And then we completed the first flood plan in January of 2023. So in 2 years, we completed the first flood planning cycle. It was very fast paced, very high moving. It was a lot to get it done. Normally, this is a 5-year process. This second cycle is going to be 5 years to get everything accomplished. We did it in 2 years to get this done. And the reason it was done in those 2 years is they opened up the next round of FIF funding was available in 2024. So we wanted to get everything done and in the state flood plan before they opened up the next round of funding for the state flood projects. So we did it really, really fast. We got a lot of great work done. But that's where we're at today. So when we looked at identified all of our flood risk, we had roughly 60,000 structures that are located inside of a floodplain throughout that basin. 60,000 structures were inside the floodplain. 144,000 people lived inside the floodplain in these structures. So it was you can tell what kind of risk we are at in the area. There's also over 2,000 road crossings that go through the floodplain. These are low water crossings throughout the whole basin where you have accidents with traffic when people go through high water process, those types of things. So that was extremely alarming as well. And there's a little over 3,000 miles inside active floodplains. So when you have active rain events, there's over 3,000 miles that could be affected by different floods. So that's some of the first thing was identifying what's the problem. Any questions about any of those numbers or the map with that? And it kind of shows you how the different rivers flow through. You have the Nueces, it starts up here on the western side and runs that orange section, and then you have the Frio and the Atascosa are the bluish areas before they hit the lake. Yes. What are the percentages of roadways that are inside the, I would say there, if I want to say the number was over 100,000 miles of roads in our basin, so it's not as large, but unfortunately most of your low water crossings and your roadways are actually in populated areas. Most people live in around rivers, lakes, bodies of water, those types of things. If you look at most of our major cities are all located on waterways. So that number where the population is quite a bit higher because you have a lot of West Texas, you know, the Webb County, Zavala County, they have lots of roadways that aren't in the flood structure, but there's not a lot of folks that live in those regions as well. Great question. Any other questions? Yes. Okay. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about a project that we have coming up. So what's the difference between some of the flood plan, flood zone, and what was the other one you said? Okay. So your flood zone, floodplain, that's what most people hear about, and a lot of that goes towards FEMA, if you heard about FEMA flood maps and those types of things. And we're going to get to that here in just a minute, but those are usually, you have a 5-year, a 10-year, a 50-year, and a 100-year floodplains, and so there's different levels based on that. And I think those are all basically same terms for the same category of type of items. I haven't heard them spread out as any other differently than that. I think they're all talking about basically your flood zone and based on your years. Now they say 100-year floodplain. Scott, how many 100-year floods have we had this last couple of decades? It's been quite a few. So not necessarily really based on the number of years in between. So first we looked at it, and all of these hotspots, so you have your light colored and you have your dark colors. Those are all FEMA represented where people had flood claims through FEMA. So that was the higher, the darker the color means the more spots that people had active claims. Either there was a loss of life, someone had a property claim, or any of those that were related to flood. And so we looked at the historical damages, the loss of life and injuries. We looked at the buildings in the floodplains, critical facilities in the floodplains, your low water crossings, and then your potential loss of life. And you can see the darker the areas is the more likely to have an event that was historically in that region. Any questions about that? I know that's a lot to take in. And we'll be happy to share any of these slides later if someone would like to have them. We went back, I believe it was 50 years, I believe. They started, I want to say the data was collected was from the late 70s, early 80s when they actually started recording that where we could actually use the information. So before we get into the projects portions and like the actual flood events and how to fix things, we also did look at our management practices and goals, and a lot of those were to how to stop future incidents from happening, keeping people from building inside of a floodplain, ordinance of those, legislative policies. There's funding information we had put in. These are all legislative goals we put into the state flood plan so that the legislators that are convening here in about another month and a half to start working on different laws and bills. We gave them a lot of different things that we recommended. Of course, number 9 and 10 is funding. That was one of our highest priorities because you can't fix a lot of our problems if we don't have the money to pay to fix those problems. So that was, we put a lot of effort into the funding and why they should be funded, but there's also things like low risk, are you reducing the risk of high hazard dams? There's not a lot of high hazard dams here in this county, but upstream there are a lot of places that have a lot of high hazard dams. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's back 40, 50, 60 years ago in this place, if the water was coming into town, the way they fixed it is they just built a big dam on the north side of town on someone's ranch or farm. Well, a lot of those are older, so we have a grant fund to study those. Are they safe? Are they, are they maybe could be washing away? Do they have undertaking, things like that? So those are, we identified what the risk of which ones we thought were in the worst shape. So those are different types of management practices we looked at over the actual structural side of things. Any questions? So what you have now is basically everything we identified in our plan. They fall under 3 categories: FME, FMP, or FMSs. Those are the acronyms used. So basically an FME is a study, a planning project. It's not a tangible thing. It's more of an idea. How do we fix a project here? We don't know really have enough solutions. Then you have your FMP, that's an actual project we identify, like here's a solution, we need to take the water this way, we need to go like the Green Lakes project we talked about earlier. And then you have an FMS for something that really doesn't kind of fall in either one of them, like education, maybe early warning systems, those type of things fall under FMS. So it's not a study, it's not a plan, and it's not a construction project, so it falls under the FMS category. So In our first plan into 2 years, again, we did a lot of work very quickly. The FME, so that's your planning, studies, and mapping, we identified 198 places that needed to be updated mapping. I won't count out which cities and counties they are, but we actually had flood maps that were pre-World War II that we were looking at. You can imagine how much things have changed since then. We have one city we worked in where the farmer did build a dam in 1972. They shifted the water and there's a whole new river structure that goes this way, but the FEMA map shows it the old way, so the people who lived on the high side can't build houses, and the people who live where the water goes now was out of the FEMA flood map. So those are types of things we saw through this process because people are using older maps. So we identified 198 of them, and it's roughly $285 million of what we think the cost is if we were to fix to go and do all those studies needed to get those projects to where they could actually, something could happen with them. Our FMPs, those are actual construction projects that we had enough information to actually, here's a plan, we identified it, we got all of the, there's a checklist of things you have to qualify to do that. We were able to come up with 31 of them, and that was about $1.2 billion to fix those 31 projects. 1.2 billion just to fix those 31 projects that we had identified. And then we had our FMSs. Those are things like education programs, your early warning systems. We had 40 of them for roughly $20 million. And then your FMXs is a combination of your FMEs, FMSs, but that does not include the FMPs. There's a couple of other categories that are smaller categories that are in there. So I believe in the first statewide flood plan, I want to say it was over $25 billion from all 16 regions when they did put their project into the state flood plan. And that was in the shortened 2-year cycle where we didn't have enough time to go over every single problem we had in the process. It was well over $20 billion to fix what we could find in that time frame. So that tells you the magnitude of funds needed to fix our issues. We'll get to that in just a second. Great question. He asked how many would be actually pursued, and we'll get to that here in just a second. Any other questions? Yes. Yes. So do we involve the Colonia? So I'll answer that question here in just a second. I'm going to go through the ones that we did apply for and what we plan to do with them. Any other questions? So all of that is, so there is a document, well, and I'll show you where you can find all that information. It's a 2,000-page report that puts all of that in there, so that's available. And we have a website that I'll show you about in a little bit later, but it has it broke down by counties too. So if you live in Nueces County, you can just click on Nueces and just see what's happening in Nueces County. If you live in Zavala County, you can click there and just look at that. Maybe I'll talk with our team whenever we get done and we can go to the website and I can show you where that works. So this is the previous flood infrastructure fund that was done in 2020. There was 140 projects in the first, before we had the first flood plan, that the state put on their intended use plan. That means project they were hoping to fund, and that was roughly $643 million of funding that they gave out for those 140 projects. Some of those, like the Green Lake project, has been completed. A lot of them are still in the design phase. I know we're working, doing some advising with Nueces County Drainage District number 2. They have a project that's in this, that they're still in the design phase for it. But so it's all over the place for projects that are done, projects are still moving forward. But that was from the 2020 flood infrastructure flood plan. In this next one that they did in 2024, they have roughly $375 million they had allocated for the flood planning projects of 2024 that we'll get to here in just a second. So these are the list of projects that were applied, so that they were put in our regional flood plan. They got adopted in the state flood plan, and in 2024, it was March of 2024, these are projects that were applied for the flood infrastructure fund. So these are projects that are in our region that actually applied for funds to get that done. They have not released who's getting funded yet, but I'll kind of go through some of them. So Aransas County, they had a early warning flood system for Aransas County. Divine had a local city flooding project. Jourdanton, Crystal City, Beeville, those were all localized flood projects where they were looking to actually build up items. Then you have Maverick County they had a study that they needed to do on one of their colonial areas right before it got into the Eagle Pass area. That was one of their projects. The Drainage District County number 2 had a project in there that, if you guys remember the Tri-County study, is anybody part of the Tri-County study that happened in the last, I think it was 3 years? I think they took them to do that project. That was with Jim Wells, Clayburgh, and Nueces County. They have a project from there, and so does Nueces County had a project from that Tri-County study. Now, one of the ones that we're really working on is the Nueces River Authority, the basin-wide ones. So one of the grants we had put in was new mapping. So we had applied for a grant for roughly $60 million that was going to replace all those maps that were from the 40s, 50s, 60s for the entire basin. That was around $60 million. And if we get that funds, we will be asking each county to then join in to be their part to cover the cost for all the 26 counties or so that are going to be included in that project. That also included an early warning system that goes from the Nueces River from Rock Springs all the way to Labani Park. So we would cover the Frio River, the Atascosa, all the tributaries. And one of the important projects of that one, important parts of that one is that's, again, all the counties talking together and being part of this project. Is early warning systems don't work if your neighbor above you who's flooding doesn't tell you it's coming downstream from their county line. Water doesn't care where the county lines are, it's coming down. So that's one of the other projects. We're also looking in that same process to do a region-wide low water crossing study, and then the high hazard dams that we talked a little bit about. So those are a list of some of the projects that qualified for funding, put in their applications. We are waiting on the process if they're going to be funded. Questions? Rockport, if I remember correctly, that one. I want to say it was involving. It might have been involving a pumping system in the city. I believe that's what that. If I'm trying to remember all the details of that one, if anybody's from Rockport, that might remember that one. But I think it had something to do with one of the pumping systems. Sorry, I can't remember all of them. Again, it was 200 plus ones that we looked at. But all those details are inside the flood plan, which I can show you how to get to in a little bit. Any other questions about the projects? So where are we now? What's going to happen? So we had just officially kicked off the second cycle. So in August, they delivered the state flood plan to the legislator. The first one that we did, we passed it in 2023. They delivered it to the legislator in 2024. We are starting it right now. Our tech memos, which would mean we need to start looking at which projects we're going to identify for the next plan, is September of 2025. So roughly a year from now, we have to turn in a rough draft of what we're planning to turn in on this next planning cycle. So we have roughly a year to get people information into us that we can include it in the next process. And in 2026, we're going to start going through each process to each project. Does it qualify for FME, FMP, all those check marks, all those types of things. And then in 2027, they will submit it. We will submit it to the state, and then the final one will be in 2028. But the next year is the most critical part for citizens of the area to start talking about their projects, get it into the system. Any questions about those timelines? We'll get to that in just a second. So these are two major websites. We have the Water Development Board. If you don't want to write all that down, if you just TWDB stands for Texas Water Development Board, type that in, type flooding. There's a whole, it'll be a page full of every resource you can think of. It'll have Region 13's, our website, a click link from there. It'll have the state plan, it'll have all those types of things. And then our website is nueces-rfpg.org. So you can just type in Nueces Regional Flood Plan, or you can type in that address, you can get to those. And that has all the information for locally how to find your information. One of the tabs on there, which I don't know if we can get on the internet from here. Can we get on the internet from here? All right, we're going off script now, folks. Let's see here. So that is what our website looks like. Let me make it a little larger. So in here, the first thing it talks about, it has all the meeting dates for the next year on there. So we're gonna talk about our roadshows coming up and other chances you can come out and meet us. Our regular meetings, we hold them in Tilden, Texas and McMullen County, which is about an hour north of here. I know I'm sorry to say that it's about an hour north of here, but you have to remember our basin is so large. We have people that are over 5 hours away. So they have a great little facility there in McMullen County that the judge lets us use, and it's kind of a middle ground for everybody to meet at. So that's where our meetings are normally out. And we're going to talk about our road shows here in a minute, but we have individual meetings where we're going to come basically localized to everybody. So that's on the main website. And then, so there's the state flood plan. If you want to click and you want to see the whole flood plan, just go to the top. There's 10 chapters, thousands of pages. If you're really bored at night, get your audio book and just plug it in and you'll fall asleep really easy. There's all types of maps on here. This table, there's so many things. There's a list of all the F&Ps, all those projects I talked about. You can find the details of them. But the easiest one for you guys is the county maps. So this, we broke down each individual county, so it's easier to find the stuff that's in your particular neighborhood. So if we go down here to Nueces County, it's going to show the map of Nueces. It's going to highlight the areas that we found issues at that were identified to us. There's a heat map that kind of shows where the problem areas are. There's a risk score from 0 to 5, and so it shows you the areas. And then all the list of projects that we found, FMEs, FMPs, all those for the Nueces County are on this project. So you can kind of see what was done through our process so far. Any questions about the website? We'll go. Okay. So those are the two best places to find the information about the process. All right. So you have a flood problem that needs a solution. What do you do now? We're October of 2024. What do you do as individuals? Well, this is the process of how we decide what a project is. So we're going to start with, is it a flood-prone area? So someone's going to say, we have a problem here. I'm sure the girl in the room, North Beach. North Beach has a flooding problem, okay? We all know North Beach has a flooding problem. So we're going to go through the list. Do you have accurate flood information? So has it been mapped recently? I don't know. So we're going to go with just no. It has not been mapped yet. So then we need an individual engineering evaluation. Yes, that becomes a flood management strategy. We know there's a problem there, but there's been no engineering previously done. We can't do an engineering. We can't pay for that through this process. It's not fundable, but we know there's a problem. We're going to identify it. We're going to put it in a list. That's an FME. Okay, so those are how that process starts. So is it a flood prone progress? Yes. Does it have the information? Yes. Someone did already paid for a study. You had the local county engineer, city engineer, started the process, started doing some mapping, those types of things. And then can you find a solution? Yes or no? Did whoever looked at it, did they figure out here's where the water needs to go? We need to build a drainage this way, or we need to have a flow this way, all those types of things. Yes or no? If they did not identify a solution, they just have a map of the area, well, then it goes back up to it's an FME because we don't have enough information to make it an FMP yet. We know it's a problem. We have a map, but we don't know the solution to it, so it's not going to be identified as a project yet. That makes sense? Okay. So this is the next one that's really important. So does it have a solution? Yes. Okay. Capital cost. Does it not have a capital cost? Is it a education program? Is it maybe a warning program? Is it we need to be on the local news and teach people about not crossing low water crossings, those type of things that aren't capital projects where you're not building something? then that's a flood management strategy. That could be changing your ordinances at your local community, that we're not going to let people build in a floodplain, which is unfortunately some places they don't have those yet. Or we're going to say, I know like in San Patricio County, you have to be, I think it's 18 inches above freeboard. So that's 18 inches. Your foundation has to be above whatever the 100-year floodplain is, those types of things. So that's what happens in a flood management strategy, okay? Now, next, so it does have a capital cost, yes. So this is an actual project. We identified something. We're going to build a new drainage system. It's going to go this way, and it's going to cost actual capital money, or we're going to put, do concrete in, or whatever that process is, yes. The next most important thing in the entire process is, does it have a negative impact? Does it have a negative impact? Yes, we realize you have a flooding project, but does your plan that you decide, do you actually flood out your neighbors down the street even further? So in order to become an FMP, your project has to have a solution. It has to be a capital cost, and then you cannot affect your neighbors. Whatever you do to the water can't drown out somebody else. If it does, then it moves into the flood mitigation project, where it's an actual project that you can apply for funding to build. If you do impact your neighbors negatively, it is a no, and you are dropped off the list. We cannot fund or recommend any projects that floods out somebody else. Yes. Yes. These are going to all be municipal, county, those types of projects. You cannot apply for personal projects to be funded through the state flood plan. If you're trying to just fix up your own property, that is not a state fundable project. Do you live in city limits or in county limits? So this is a county, it would be a county project. Are you inside one of the drainage districts? In Callahan? Calallen, I'm sorry. Calallen. I don't know if you're in drainage district number 2. I think that stops before it gets to, Scott, do you know? Yeah, you're not. Okay, so so we verified you're not in the city, you're not in the drainage district, so now it's a county. So what you would need to do is speak with your local county commissioners or their public and have them identify the project, and they can go through this process with us to find a solution to affect the whole neighborhood. So that's what we would be looking for, is how do we fix a neighborhood drainage problem? And that would be, the county would have to be the sponsor of the project. Okay. That's how the process would work, is you have, so to be one of these three, an evaluation, a project, or evaluation, we can just say there's a problem over there, we'll put it on the list, we can do that. You don't need to have a sponsor. But if you're going to have a project or a strategy, you do have to have a political subdivision sponsor. So that's the City of Corpus Christi, Nueces County, Drainage District number 2, those types of entities. Someone has to sponsor the project as they're a government agency who's going to then go fix and try to find a solution and then fix the problems. The best thing I could say to do in that situation is give us the information of where the project is, and then we can at least get you as an FME, like there's an issue area here. And then if we can get the counties to join in, because we can't push to the FMP status if there's not a sponsor that's going to move forward the project. That I don't know if I can answer that question. If that was I mean, that must have been a county decision, I would assume. I don't know the specifics of it. But again, if you would like to, we'll look at that process through the next flood planning cycle, see if there's anything that we can do through the flood planning process. But I'd have to get some more information on that. And I don't know how the county, I'm assuming that was the county made their designation for that. Well, after we get done here, maybe we can talk for a little bit and see if there's anything we can do. I've got to gather more information before I could help y'all in anything, but we'd be happy to look into it if there's something that we can do or put part of our process. Was there another question on this side of the room, I thought? Any other questions about how you get to be in the plan? Okay, so this kind of shows you where we are on our timeline. So we are here October 2024. We've started the next planning cycle. Then we're going to start looking at, in January 25 is when we're going to have amendments to the first planning cycle. So if there's a project that needs to be upgraded to an FMP, that everything's already done, it meets all the check marks, there is a process as the state allowed us to add new items to the state flood plan, even though we're finished the first planning cycle. I'll give you, for instance, we're working with Live Oak County. That would be George West and Three Rivers. They started a flood planning project when they realized they didn't get into their projects weren't in the first plan. The county officials paid for a process that we helped them do. We managed it for them, and we identified 4 projects that are going to affect the city of George West and the city of Three Rivers that we're going to then amend the state flood plan. And that process has to happen in January of 2025. So we're not looking at, we're happy to put as many as possible, but it's a pretty hard, narrow scope to get into that to get the first amended project in. But we are happy. We actually, Region 13 is the first of the 16 regions to actually have projects that are ready to meet that category. So it's kind of a milestone for us. But now we also have to figure out how to do all of that because no one's ever done it before. So we're in the middle of that process right now. One of the major things is by April of 2025, you have to have them submitted, and that's when they're going to have the deadlines to do all the legal things they do at the Capitol. There's, I don't even know most of it. I apologize. That's not even my area of expertise. There's a lot of legislative things that have to happen in that process, but these are some of the amendment processes. We are assuming that they're going to let us do that on the next planning cycle as well, but most likely all of your projects here are going to be just part of the second flood planning cycle, unless you've already started designing a project today, which I don't know if anybody in this room designed one. Scott, you designed one? I keep picking on Scott. He's my engineering friend, so I'm just going to pick it on him all day today. Yes, ma'am. That was a TxDOT project, and that we were not in. We were, I'll say, flies on the wall. We were in the meetings when they talked about all that, but that was not our decision to make. That was a TxDOT decision. Their process that went through that was in the part of the evacuation process, and they were they're adding more lanes to it, and they were trying to make it so that it's bigger, higher, wider for more evacuation of the city of Corpus Christi during a hurricane event. That's the whole backbone of why they were doing it. The whole engineering of it, that's a little bit out of mine. Majority of it was, the biggest pusher was hurricane evacuation. So how to get involved. So first, you're here tonight, so I appreciate that very much. We do what we call road shows. We have 4 of them lined up, and I'm also proud to say of the 16 river flood planning groups, we're the only one that does this because it's such a big region. It's hard to get people from Lakey to come down here to South Texas. You guys don't want to go to Cotulla for a meeting. So we broke it into 4 sessions. We have we call it our upper basin. That's a very unique area. If you haven't been up there, if you've Garner State Park, that's the Rocky Hill country where all the springs are, the Edwards Aquifer and those types of things. That meeting is going to be in Lakey, Texas on October 21st. And then we have our upper mid basin. That's kind of our food basket. I'm not sure if you've ever been out that way to Frio, Zavala, Uvalde counties. That's LaSalle. like 80% of the green stuff you buy at HEB comes from those 4 counties over there. So it's really beautiful. You've been out there, just fields and fields of cabbage and green beans and all those types of things. It's really cool. So that meeting is going to be in Pearsall. Then we have what we call our lower mid. That would be the lake area. That's going to be McMullen, Live Oak, those counties. We're going to have that one in Benavides, Texas. And then we have Group D, which is mainly you guys, will be here October 18th. That's next Friday. It'll be in Robstown. Our corporate offices that we have here at Robstown, have everybody been to you know where the old outlet mall is across from the fairgrounds? That's where our offices are located. So if you, or you can get some of your city officials to come, that'll be on October the 18th. And I think you guys all have the flyer that's kind of got a little bit more of the details with the addresses, times, and all those types of things. But of the 250 plus projects that we had to put in the plan, every one of them came from an individual that came to our meetings in our first planning cycle. We had these same 4 road shows. We had some Zoom meetings, those types of things. Every project came from the ground, bottom up. Our area is so big, we couldn't go door to door and try to find every flood project. We really depend on people telling us where the problems are, and then we try to identify that. I'm going to repeat that one more time because it's so important. Every project was someone came to us and talked about it. I know we have some folks that were really mad about North Beach not being in the first flood planning project. No one came to us. The city didn't come to us. The county, no one told us about it. And I apologize, but if you can tell, it's a very large region. So this, the squeaky wheel gets the grease type of project. That's definitely us. Come tell us your projects, your problems, and we can look at them. And we can't always find a solution, but at least we can start the process. Any questions about that? That's so important to me, is that I really need people to be involved. Great question. Do we ever invite FEMA representatives? So on our flood meetings, we are required by state legislation. We have to have someone from TDM, Texas Department of Emergency Management. We have Texas Parks and Wildlife, TxDOT. There's a whole group. Basically, you name the state agency, they are required to send somebody to our meetings, including TDM works with FEMA. Unfortunately, we don't always get a great attendance from them. So I would recommend you telling your elected officials that, why aren't y'all coming to our meetings to get involved in those types of things? But they are supposed to be there, but unfortunately, they didn't always come to every meeting. All of our meetings are open to the public. We have our group is, I'm so lucky to have my members that I showed you at the beginning, is they are very open. We want to hear from you. Again, every project came from someone coming to us and telling us their problems. And this next planning cycle is, we have a huge area. If we get that new mapping FEMA grant, the 5th grant that we applied for, we will start to be able to identify some problems on our own through the mapping process, but we are going to be driven by the people. Where are your problems? Tell us so we can identify them. Again, we have 1.1 million people in our basin, so we definitely need, the loudest voices are the ones who are going to be in the project, in the plan. Yes, the meetings are attended virtually, but it is listen only. Because due to state regulations about the way we have, because it is a state process meeting. So you're in person, you can hear, you can participate, do all those things. If you're online, you can listen, you can put notes in the chat. My email, I'm always available to talk to people and things like that, but you can definitely listen in our meetings. So that is one of the processes. So we've heard that a lot. And so when we hopefully get funded and we do the whole region state map, that's what we're trying to do for the River Authority, but your counties can do it. A county or a district can do their own new maps. And if you have new, better data, you can actually use that over FEMA's data. The county does have to approve that. There's a process to do it, because right now it takes around 10 years for FEMA to approve new flood mapping. So if, say, we do this new process in next year and we get all these things mapped, we don't want to wait 10 years because honestly, in 10 years, a lot of the stuff's going to change in 10 years. Their map's going to be off. So there is a process for your local officials can accept that map as the better, newest material, and you are able to use that as your new FEMA map until FEMA approves your new map. So that is a process, but your government officials have to do that from either city or county level. All the above. It's, I was the mayor for 12 years also in the city of Poth, the great city of Poth Pirates. If you know the Poth Pirates over there. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. It really does. And actually, the polite squeaky wheel also. Going into a city council meeting or a commissioner's court meeting and yelling at them isn't really going to work. If you say, we have a problem, can you please help us do these types of things? It usually goes a lot further, but you would have to petition someone at your county level to do that, whether it's your commissioner, the public works, or the judge. Any other questions? Yeah, I totally understand, and I can't help you with anything like that right now, but I understand moving forward. I do recommend, so like you can be on the mailing, like if you go to our website, there's a contact us, you can be on the website and we have email updates like, here, we have an event coming up, here's the new project. So we're gonna send those emails. And if you live in a city or county, most of them have that. Hopefully they do send out those information, but make sure, unfortunately, a lot of it does fall on the individual to pay attention to what's going on around them. And sometimes things aren't very easy to find. So you do have to, unfortunately, do your research. I don't know how many city council meetings and commissioner court meetings that I attend, either in person or virtually, just to hear what's going on around us. So we didn't map the whole area. What we did is we looked at the individual issues that were brought to us on a miniature scale for where their problems are. What we realized, so our grant is we applied for grant funds to do the mapping of the whole area because the maps were so old. And so we're really hoping that we get that grant. And then after we get that grant, then it's gonna be very important for your county that you live in to join us in that study so that your county can get the mapping done as well. I think I only got 17, maybe 40 more slides to go somewhere in there. So there are some other ways for you to be involved in the process. We have our Region 13, we are seeking volunteers. We have 3 subcommittees. One of them is for our flood management practices and future flood mitigation goals. Now that's the legislative, the administrative side about them changing rules, that's what that committee is going to do, is we're going to be looking at that and we're going to make suggestions to the legislator. Here's what we think you should do at the legislative level to then cycle back down to your local counties. We're also looking, we have a legislative one directly for flood planning. Races like that's about funding and those types of things are a direct item that they can vote on a bill, those types of projects. And then we have our future flood risk considerations is kind of, we made our original, what we decided on how to score everything, and we're going to be looking at reevaluating to make sure we did the best we could last time. So there's 3 subcommittees that anyone in the public, anyone in this room can join. You don't have to be a voting member. You can just be a member of the public who wants to join us on those 3 subcommittees. We'll have, each one of them will have up to 3 virtual calls. So that'll all be virtual. There won't be any in-person meetings for that one, so you don't have to worry about being there. And then we asked that they do come to a couple of our meetings later when we talk about your subcommittee item. So whenever we do the subcommittees and we bring it to our group to vote on, we want you to come to that meeting so you can talk about your subcommittee and what you guys looked at. So there'll be members of our team on there, and then we're looking for people from the public to join us. Any other questions about that? Yes, I have some cards up here, so if you're done, I have some extra cards. Our deadline is the November 15th, so that's about a month away where we need to form those committees and start that process. So if you want to be part of one of those, I can give you my card up here. But yeah, email me, we're going to get that going. And then we're done. There's Labonte Park in 02. Any other questions about any of this process? Thank y'all very much for listening to me. I do appreciate it. But again, I want to put this on you guys. Spread the word, be part of the process. Again, every project we put in a plan, someone like this sitting in this room is the one who told us about it, and that's why it's in the state plan. Oh, I'm 2 minutes early. I guess a song and dance now.
Yeah, that's right. Karaoke.
Judge Canales was going to be here. She had a private function that came up, and she wasn't able to join us today. Judge Canales is one of our members of our team. Well, this is the place to bring that up. You didn't come to see me? Man. No, we really do try to bring this. I mean, this is the people's plan, and we really try to get you involved as much as possible. Please be part of the process. Please spread the word. That's what I'm here for today. I can't say that enough. We really want to help. We really want to try to fix. We can't fix every problem, but we can't even try if we don't know where the problem is. I mean, well, there is the process I told you we talked to you about, and we can guide you all through that if there's any more. They ran out this week, they said. We've been on site several times, and I can't say I disagree with you. TxDOT is its own. We can only do so much. We'll just put it that. Well, this is Scott Harris, my friend. No, no. He's got extra business cards. There's a lot of great engineering firms out there. I mean, there's several part of our plan. If you become part of the process, yeah. So Call your Congress to tell them, the state representatives, to tell the Water Development Board to put our fifth plan to do the flood mapping. And then once it gets done, then you got to tell your commissioners to join the process. And we will be mapping the entire area of every county that joins the process. And then that information can be used to fight FEMA or improve FEMA's maps, those types of things. But again, it's up to your county to participate. I can't, if they don't participate, I can't do it, the work in their county. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all so much for coming tonight.
Yes, thank you.